your cycle and route, which is that little box that we highlighted earlier, and submit. The system will then send you an email, and it essentially makes sure you are who you say you are, and then you come back to the home and you can log in. And I'm gonna fill in the blanks here real quick. It's hard to type when you're presenting, you know. So there's actually my wife, and fortunately she's here, so she can attest that that's my address that I mentioned earlier. I took my cell phone number out just for this presentation because people like to call me sometimes. So what you can see here is your account number, your customer information, the status of your bill right now. You can come in here and you can see your payment history. And so I can see here all the payments that I've made and kind of see if I've got $100 went out here or something went wrong. I can go in here and make payments. So I can set up an on-demand payment. That means that I could have it pay in the future, or I can put a account in the bank and set up auto pay for that, or I can make an immediate payment. If they're coming to shut off my water in the morning and I'm in my pajamas at 2, now I can go in and make that payment and they won't come and get me in the morning. I'd show you the auto pay screen, but that'll have my banking information on it, and I don't want to, my wife really doesn't want me to share that. So let's go look at consumption history real quick. The refuse, recycle carts, sewer, and stormwater, those don't change, so there's really no graph or any report on that. But I can go in here and I can see how much water I use for a particular time. If I had a pool, for example, I would see one of these numbers is really big when I filled my pool. I can look at graphs on that information and see the red line here, that's 2015. And so I can see my consumption over time. So there's really a lot of great information here. One thing that I wanted to go over real quick was you can also create a user account, this username. And if this string of numbers, your account number, is kind of hard to remember. So you can go in and we create what we call a master account. And so I named my master account sort of my nickname, which is Sumo Bear. And this is my real account, so you guys get my real life. So I'm a little strange in real life. So if, say for instance, I had an apartment building and I was paying 10 utility bills, they could all appear here. And then I could go through them really quickly and make those payments without having to send in, to stand at the counter and go through 10 different bills or whatever. So I could see the efficiency on one apartment as opposed to another. In the case of a single user, I only have one account, but still I have the ability to use that easy to remember username. And so I would just click on this right here, and I'm back where I was when I typed in using my account number. So that just really quickly shows you that we now have the ability to pay your utility bill online at no extra charge. So I thank you for your time.
Thanks for your work on that, Todd. That's going to be very convenient.
Yes.
And so landlords would be the ones mostly using that master account.
Landlords can use the master account, but even a single user.
Okay,
So
great.
you bet.
Thank you.
You bet.
Todd, may I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
Unrelated to your presentation, but somewhat related to utility bill. A year from now, we're going to be implementing the stormwater utility program.
Mm-hmm.
Will the utility bill look any different, or will there be a further explanation?
Stormwater is already on the utility bill.
All right.
So there's a $2 charge on there now for
Right.
residents, and so it's going to be exactly the same as that. If you have if your stormwater changes, then you'll see the graphs and those kinds of things where you can actually track it. But on that site, there's a place where you can actually see the breakdown of individual charges. So you can see what part of that is your stormwater as opposed to your refuse or your water or your sewer or whatever. So there's really two sides to this. there's the residential side, which has consumption, and then there's the business side, which has a different kind of
Right.
usage, and that's mapped differently, but it's in that system as well. So if you're a business, if you're Dillon's, for example, this would work perfectly well for you as well.
I know we're going to be going through hopefully an education program to the public on the new stormwater utility program and its rates. Will there be a series of communications with those utility bills to inform them of the
We
change of
have a
rates?
message on every utility bill,
All right.
and that message we can change. And so every time you get a utility bill, there's a new something going on up there. For example, we'll be talking about waterbill.hutchgov.com on there, and we can also put in a third of a page insert in those bills as well. So you just need to coordinate that with staff, and we can add anything to utility bills we need to. So we just try not to raise the postage cost too
Yeah.
much.
Well, communication is going to be important. I
Yes,
think
it
we all
is. Absolutely.
understand that.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. Something certainly we'll do is implementation actually is January 1 of
Right.
16, so we've got some opportunity. And as you know, we've already communicated with the 100 bigger parcels, buildings. And if you didn't get that, probably good that you weren't on the top 100. But that way they get an idea of the impact of that fee on them. So
What about the rest of the businesses? When are you planning on doing a mass mailing?
don't believe there's a mass mailing
Well,
that we've got planned to every business. But I think some of the things we'll do, on the communication side of this, would be some water bill notes on there. Here it's coming, and of course, as the council considers final approval of all this,
Right.
we'll have some information in the news media about size of parcel, kind of so you can kind of compare your business to what's on the chart. Hopefully have some information like that available.
When will businesses be able to contact the city to find out what they're,
They could do that now.
so you've got all those numbers calculated right now?
Yeah. Yeah, we've got several, I don't have them with me, but examples of sizes, and
Right.
so people call in, oh yeah, you're about this, and,
Right.
here's what it is, and I think Jeff Peters down at, Public Works has received several phone calls from the 100 letters that went out.
Is Jeff Peters the contact person?
Yeah, is he the
Yes, he
contact?
is.
Jeff
Yeah.
is?
So
Okay.
So if you're a local business person and you want to find out what your proposed stormwater utility rate's going to be, is contact the city, ask for Jeff Peterson,
Yeah,
and then Jeff can get that information back to
yeah, and
you.
I'd give you the phone number if I knew it, it's
Yeah.
694.
694-1900, 1900.
Okay.
That's the number to call to get Jeff.
I'll-
Yeah, I
I'll
know.
write that down later. But I think that would be something good to put out there because,
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a lot of questions.
well, Business 101, Business 102, 103,
Yeah.
so.
With,
It's just
along
as long
with,
as we have a way for people to easily access
Right.
that number, so they can do budget purposes, budget
Yeah.
planning purposes as well.
We can figure out something on and probably, maybe we already have on the website that shows, kind of a listing of this size is this much, and you can kind of, people know what their size generally is, so.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds simple, but like, I know how many square foot my warehouse is, but I don't know what my footprint
Yeah,
is.
yeah,
I mean, so I mean, just
yeah.
something to think about. Because Jeff's gonna be, hopefully Jeff will be deluged with calls before people get their bill and go, ooh, what's this? And they call it mad,
Yeah.
so.
Well, the FAQ sheet was in this most recent water bill.
Was that in the last one?
Yeah, I
knew
mean,
we
I
had
got
coming
one
out, yeah.
when
And
I
that
opened it.
that had a lot of that information
Yeah,
in
it did. I mean, it didn't address your specific concerns as a business, but for the consumer,
For the residential,
natural
it's all
consumer,
obviously the same.
it was pretty well outlined.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, I'm just more interested
Well, sure,
in businesses, because they all have different
right, they would,
footprints.
right, they would.
Okay.
Well, it's
We-
kind of
we-
a PR thing, I believe, with the community, because this is a major shift.
Mhm.
And it's important that we be good listeners.
Yeah.
And I know Jeff will do a great job of responding to those questions, so very good.
You might want to warn Jeff we had this conversation.
Sorry about
He's
that.
aware,
So you
yeah.
can take a couple of
knows, huh?
vacation days and,
Like I said,
Yeah.
they've had several conversations with people already on it, so
Okay,
on
I'm
the
sure.
letters that were.
I'm sure they have.
Thank you, Todd.
you bet.
Next item, please.
Item 4B, oral communications from the audience.
Well, this is the part of the meeting that we allow the public to address the council on items of concern to them. So if anyone would like to address the council, we do ask that you approach the podium State your name and address, and please limit your remarks to 5 minutes or less and to items that are not on the agenda.
Jade, I'd like to start out today if I could. Bob Bush, 4904 Cottonwood, city resident. Last week, our last meeting, I talked about a local business, and I wanted to promote another one. This is going to be the alley, which is going to be opening soon. It's a great project put together by a number of local investors, and it's something that we talked about at the State of the City address, and John Deerdoff did an excellent job. And one of the things with this, John talked about his great desire to join a bowling team as soon as possible, and so one of the members of our community sent me a bowling shirt for John. John, please. Wow. See, we have the Hutch News here.
Oh,
And
Johnny Strike.
and Johnny Stryker. Johnny Stryker, 2015. Tried to get a plumbing company that would also be a part of this, but I couldn't find one that was interested. So congratulations.
Wow, it's got my name on it.
It's got your name on
It's
it.
got the retro look.
It's got the retro look. Oh, you're going back to the Stone Age.
Oh,
man.
thank you.
All right. You're ready for the Flintstones. And I would like to take a moment to thank Ron Sellers, who came up with that idea and donated it to Johnny Stryker. So again, good luck. It's going to be a great enterprise. I believe they said May, looking at opening. So again, John's ready to go. He just needs 4 more people with ugly bowling shirts to play with him. So thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Is there anyone else who would like to address the council today? Seeing none, please call the next item.
Item 5A through H, consent agenda.
And I believe we would like to separate one item on the consent agenda.
5C.
Yeah, 5C. Would it be better to address that after we approve the consent agenda or prior
I
to?
think you could just make a motion to move it to new business
Okay.
and deal with it then.
Is
Okay,
there-
I will move to move item 5C on the consent agenda to new business, and it would be 7D, or 7, yeah, it'd have to be 7D.
How about
would-
7, yeah,
Wouldn't it, or
yeah.
you wanna make it something else?
We'll do it, let's just do it
Move it
under
to new
first,
business.
first item under new business.
Okay.
We've got it.
Okay, all right.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Please call the roll.
Bush,
Yes.
Soldner,
Yes,
Daveline,
yes.
Tyros de Carvalho.
Yes. Okay. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I would move to approve the consent agenda and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Bush,
Yes.
Soldner,
yes,
Daveline,
Yes.
Tyros de Carvalho.
Yes. Next item, please.
Item 6A, consider resolution setting a public hearing for redevelopment project plan for the Hutchinson Mall redevelopment district.
Mayor and council, at your January 20th council meeting, the council approved an ordinance that established the mall redevelopment district. We also approved, you also approved a resolution approving the memorandum of understanding with Rockstep Capital for the mall development project. And the council now is being asked to consider a tax increment financing redevelopment plan for the specific projects that would occur within that district. The developer did submit their redevelopment plan, which was included in your packet. On January 20th, the Planning Commission actually reviewed the redevelopment plan and found that it was consistent with our comprehensive plan, which is one of the requirements in the approval process. And so the resolution before you today is really just setting the formal public hearing for consideration and adoption of the redevelopment plan. And the public hearing, as per the resolution, will be set for March 17th, 2015 at 9 a.m. in this room. Staff would recommend approval of the resolution as presented. I would comment that with us today, representing Rockstep is Tommy Stewart, Marcus Abbott, the attorney working with the group, and our new mall manager, and I hate it that I forgot your name, I'm sorry.
Laura.
Laura, thank you. Sorry about that. So with that, would stand for any questions you might have, and certainly the mall development group would as well.
And as a reminder, this is just to set the public hearing.
Correct.
Right.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion, we set the public hearing for the redevelopment project as presented by staff on March 17th.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Bush,
Yes.
Soldner,
Yes.
Dave Line.
Yes.
Iris De Carvalho.
Yes. Next item, please.
Item 6B, consider resolution setting a public hearing on the petition for creation of a community improvement district for Hutchinson Mall.
Mayor and council, as I stated earlier at our January 20th meeting, the council did approve a memorandum of understanding with the Rock Step Group for redevelopment of the mall, and the MOU contemplated the creation of a community improvement district, a CID, for the mall. The city has received the required petition for creation of the CID. The developer, as you recall, is proposing to implement a CID sales tax in an amount not to exceed 1% for stores within the district, which would basically be the mall proper. The resolution just simply sets the required public hearing for March 17th at 9 a.m. in this room, and we would recommend approval of the resolution as presented.
Well, I would move to approve setting the public hearing for the petition for the creation of a community improvement district for the Hutchinson Mall for March 17th at 9 a.m.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
I'd just like to make a quick comment that in the last meeting, there was a member of the committee that talked about some concerns about creating the CID in the TIF district and the benefits that would be accrued by the developer of the mall. And since that, I've had nothing but positive conversations and comments from people in the public as well as local business owners supporting the work that we're doing to fix the mall, if you will. When you think about the Basanti that was torn down, when you think about the Wiley, unfortunately we let that go to basically rock bottom before we resurrected it. And now at the mall, I'm hearing positive things about how we're stepping forward proactively to fix the problem. And again, I hear nothing but support.
Oh, that's good to hear. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Bush,
Yes.
Soldner.
Yes.
Dave Line.
Yes.
Iris De Carvalho.
Yes. Next item, please.
Item 7A1, approval of addendum to contract with Hutch Rec Commission for the Salt City Splash Agreement.
Casey will do that.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Casey. We're just trying to confuse you.
Yes.
But you know, it would be helpful to have Justin or Tony come up.
I don't know if Justin's aware that we pulled this off the consent agenda.
Keeping everyone on their toes this morning.
Good morning, Justin Combs, Director of Parks and Facilities. This item really has been long overdue in my opinion. We're looking at a slight increase in the rates for Salt City Splash. It comes to about a 10% increase across the board. Looking at the trends, the usage trends, and the subsidy trend, I think that this will help our position. Tony's estimating this will increase the revenue by around $10,000. Our subsidy last year was 49, something like
Yeah,
that.
49,000.
49, sorry. It keeps us competitive with those around us. I know it's not an easy decision, but I do feel that it's necessary. It's been 9 years since we've looked at the rates. Tony is here as well and can help answer any specific questions about it. But we did look at this in depth, and we think it's necessary. And we're happy to answer any questions or concerns that you may have. But it is our recommendation to move forward with these rate increases.
Thank you, Justin.
Justin, you answered my first question, so you already answered. So it's been 9 years since there's been a rate increase,
Correct.
and you said that this makes us competitive with
I
our.
think it's been 6 years.
Is that?
Yeah,
It's
it's
2009.
209, 206, okay, I apologize.
Okay.
Yeah, 6
209.
years.
It was the last rate increase.
209 was the last rate increase. Okay.
6 years.
So then, that aside, so if there are people in our community that want to use the pool that are lower economic, we talked about the schools have free or reduced lunches, is there an opportunity for citizens to, of course, not anonymously, but, privately get some sort of a discount?
Tony can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I don't believe there's a scholarship program for pool admission. I know Hutchinson has that program for other programs where people who qualify, who are low income, can get reduced rates.
Scholarship's a nice way to put that. Thank you. I should have put it that way.
Yeah, scholarships.
But
That's,
is
I
there
don't
a
know
wa-
if that's what Hutchinson calls them officially.
Yeah, no, that's great. Couldn't find a good term, but is there a scholarship program available for the splash?
There's a scholarship program available for swim lessons, and then there is a discount card available for those that meet certain income levels. So I don't think it comes to about half price, but it's right around 50% if you do qualify. And we have a series of submissions that they make to see if they qualify.
Right, but you're using the same criteria for the splash that you use for your other programs?
Correct.
Okay, good. Thank you. That's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
We did have one person contact us about, expressing that if a rate increase is coming, that improvements need to be made to the facility. And I believe you touched on some of those in the past, but can you remind us about what is being done to bring that facility up to par?
Yeah, we've got a couple things. One thing I'm working on right now is actually upgrading the chlorination system. That's not really an upgrade the public will see. That's more of a safety improvement. But the bigger thing in this year's budget, we've got some money for a pool master plan, or to update the current pool master plan, which we're going to split 50-50 with Hutch Rec. And we'll get a better idea of what amenities we're lacking, and so what we could add to the pool in future years to keep it attractive, not just to citizens of Hutchinson, but hopefully attract some of those folks from beyond Hutchinson back to the pool. So.
That's great. I think the public would, just needs to hear that we are in the process of
Yeah.
making changes and making it a better
Yeah.
public utility, I guess.
Yeah, that's, in my opinion, I know we kind of went over this when we did the annual report, but when the pool was first built, it was, we were ahead of the curve. We were the first ones to really dive into the outdoor aquatic center, and now there's so much competition that it's not necessarily a fact that our facility is aging or out of date. It's just there's other alternatives for folks to go to. So.
I think that is really critically important in terms of really looking seriously at that master plan, because so many times I think in the public arena, we build a facility and then it sits there for 20 years and then all of a sudden we've got to catch up. And this is common situation, and so hopefully this master plan will take it serious and incorporate that, I presume, into the CIP at some point.
Yes.
Yeah,
For
this is kind of the first step to get it.
Implementation, sure.
Yeah, to get an idea of what cost will be, what elements are needed, what's important to the community, and then what the cost estimates of those would be, and how we can implement those into the CIP.
Excellent.
And again, to your point about aging facilities, the chlorination system we're looking at really, again, it's not going to be the public won't notice
Right.
it, but from a safety standpoint and a functionality standpoint, it'll be a huge improvement. Primarily on the safety side, we currently use chlorine gas. If you know anything about chlorine gas, it's deadly. So we're getting away from that. When the facility was built, that was kind of the way to chlorinate large pools. It's very effective but very dangerous, so we're moving away from that. So we are trying to stay on top of the needs at the facility beyond just the just the slides and pools and things.
Are there any further questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
I would move that we approve the addendum to the contract for the Salt City Splash rate increase.
The motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Bush,
Yes.
Soldner,
Yes.
Dave Line,
Yes.
Tyros de Carvalho.
Yes. Next item, please.
Item 7A, consider request to rezone 1327 East Avenue A.
Good morning, I'm Casey Jones with the City Planning Department. And for your consideration this morning, we have a request by Interfaith Housing Services for a rezoning of a property that they recently acquired. The property address is 1327 East Avenue A. It's located at the southwest corner of A and Lorraine. And the property is currently zoned commercial, C2. Sorry, I can't seem to get the slides to advance, but basically the property at one time had a commercial building on it. That building has been demolished, and now Interfaith Housing has acquired the property. They're looking to construct a single-family home there, if possible. And to do that, they need to have the zoning changed to a residential district. So that's what this request is about. It's fairly straightforward. Staff recommended approval. The Planning Commission recommended approval on January 6th, and I don't think there was anyone from the general public who attended the hearing or spoke in favor or in opposition to it. And I believe Ron Fisher from Interfaith Housing is in the audience if you have any questions of him.
Well, Casey, I just know the city has put a tremendous investment into that Avenue A corridor, and it's really exciting to see that organizations are stepping up and joining that work. And I really appreciate the investment and the commitment to that corridor that the Interfaith has put together. Ron, did you want to speak about the project at all? You don't have to. I just thought since you're here, you might want to tell us what you're planning.
Thank you, Jade. Initially, our hope was to go quickly in putting a house in on this particular property. We actually have two properties on Avenue A that we were looking at for this next year and putting infill houses on, one at 915, a little bit farther to the east, and this one. As it relates to the writing of our grant, we had to drop this one from this year's grant, and the reason has to do with certain specifications that the government puts on noise limitations. And if you know, there is a active railroad track just to the south and just to the north of that property. That doesn't mean that Interfaith Housing has an agenda not to put a house on this property in the future. It just means that there'll need to be other funds for that. So we want to keep moving forward with this zoning because our long-term agenda is to put a house on this property. You'll see that line of houses right there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We actually own about half of the homes right now that are on that block, and we rent them out. And I hope that you would agree we're seeking to take good care of that end of Avenue A and want to keep doing so.
And is your office right
Right across
west
the
of
street,
8th?
number
Or
8.
Number 8. Oh,
Yes,
it is
ma'am.
number 8. Okay. Good. Are there further questions for Mr. Fisher?
Thanks, Ron.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion, we approve the request to rezone 1327 East Avenue A as recommended by staff.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Bush,
Yes.
Soldner,
Yes.
Dave Line,
Yes.
Tyros de Carvalho.
Yes. Next item, please.
Item 7B, consider city manager contract for 2015.
Paul Brown, City Attorney. You have before you the proposed contract for the city manager for 2015. Really only just a couple changes from the last contract. One is to include a 3.2% increase, the same as merit step increases for all department heads for 2015. And also there's been an adjustment with respect to health insurance. Affordable Care Act won't let us pay the entire premium for the city manager as we have in the past. So there's been an adjustment in the overall base salary so that there's not an overall reduction or resulting in a less than 3.2% increase for the city manager for this particular contract. And those are the only two changes that have been made, and it's similar to increases that we've had in the past. And as always, I ask you to approve the contract from my boss.
Well, we're certainly lucky to have you, John. So, is there a motion?
Well, I would enthusiastically approve the proposed contract for the city manager for 2015 and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Oh,
Please.
every year I pretty much make this comment, but I think it's important for people in the community to understand that the city manager position, basically manages responsible for over 400 employees, give or take where we are on the employee levels, in addition to a budget that's in excess of $60–70 million, plus being able to work with the public and handle the complaints that come in at all different levels, as well as managing the different levels that the city deals with. We talk about the city as a 24/7 operation, 365 days a year, and that's everything from law enforcement, fire services, public works, as well as water billing and moving things ahead. And John does an excellent job, and I think sometimes people don't appreciate how difficult that job is and how complex. And so I would also support his getting the same amount of raise as the other managers at that level. So.
Well said.
What's that?
Would the clerk please call the roll?
Bush,
Yes.
Soldner,
Yes.
Dayline.
Yes.
Tyros de Carvalho.
Yes. Next item, please.
Item 7C, consider appeal of employee termination by Fraternal Order of Police Lodge Number 7 and Charles Malvo.
John, would you?
Mayor and Council, today you're hearing the appeal of the termination of Charles Mablo, and this is your hearing, your appeal hearing, and I would suggest at this time that you allow Mr. Mablo to address the city council. You can ask questions of him or his representative, and then City Attorney Paul Brown will address you as well, and then we can follow up with questions of either party.
Great. Mr. Malvo, or your attorney?
Hi, my name's Don Aubrey. I'm here on behalf of FOP Lodge Number 7 and Charles Malvo. Mr. Malvo is with us here today. This is an appeal of a decision by the city manager. In this appeal, we seek to reinstate a decision by an arbitrator that there was not just cause to terminate Officer Malvo. Now let's talk about what the record shows. The record shows that Officer Malvo made a mistake. He denied having received a text message when he had received it, and then he quickly rectified that mistake. So he recognized that he made a mistake, and he rectified it. But let's see what the record doesn't show either. The record doesn't show that as a result of this, we have a police officer who can no longer be trusted with a gun, can no longer be trusted with a taser, or who's some sort of menace to the citizens of Hutchinson. Indeed, since his termination, Officer Malvo has received a top secret clearance with the United States Army, and he has been cleared by the Food and Drug Administration to work in the manufacture of controlled substances. So this is an individual who is a solid citizen, who has the integrity to represent both the federal government and the cities and the citizens of Hutchinson. So when considering this case, let's not cloud the record with hyperbole. This was a mistake. An individual made one mistake, and that mistake did not in any way interfere with the investigation of misconduct by another officer. So let's make another thing clear what this isn't. There is no conspiracy of silence here. As a matter of fact, the record shows that shortly into his interview, Officer Malvo, without having to be prompted, without having to be threatened, identified what he knew about the conduct of Officer Ragosa. And what he knew was not what the record shows that Officer Ragosa did. And you'll note, the vast majority of the evidence in this case is about Officer Ragosa. Officer Malvo knew very little about what Officer Ragosa did. Actually, he knew more about what Officer Ragosa didn't do. We're in an electronic age now, and locker room candor, locker room banner has reached into the arena of text messages and back and forth. What is in this record is locker room banter. There's braggadocio by Officer Ragosa. Officer Malvo never believed the braggadocio. As a matter of fact, he clarified, he says, come on, you didn't do that. And Officer Ragosa admitted to Officer Ragosa, no, I'm just bragging. So Officer Malvo recognized that in the text messages that you see in the record, nothing more than braggadocio, locker room braggadocio. And indeed, the record shows not one person has shown that Officer Ragosa engaged in the sexual contact that he bragged about. The record shows indeed Officer Ragosa admitted that he didn't engage in that conduct. It confirmed what Officer Malvo believed. Officer Malvo, there's been some suggestion that Officer Malvo failed in a duty to report another officer's misconduct. Officer Malvo did not believe Officer Ragosa. He recognized Officer Ragosa's comments for what they were, braggadocio, locker room talk. He was not aware of any contact between Officer Ragosa and another citizen. All he was aware of was some bragging. But when he was called into the internal affairs investigation, he says, yeah, he told me about this, he said this, I didn't believe him. And he didn't believe him for good reason. So there is no conspiracy of silence here. There is no instance here of one officer attempting to destruct the truth. Officer Malvo identified what he knew in the context of the internal affairs investigation. Now, this case was presented to an arbitrator. And Arbitrator Kossoff, after hearing all the evidence, issued a 36-page scholarly discussion of this case, of the failure of the city to act consistently with respect to imposing discipline, and Officer Kossoff explained why this conduct creates no impediment for Officer Malvo to ever serve as a witness. Arbitrator Kossoff identified the conduct by the other officer, which was falsifying a police report. He lied to his superiors about what he had put in the police report. He hadn't put information timely into a police report. If that report was ever needed to be used in court, it would not show that it was timely done. There is no reason to make a distinction between Officer Graham and Officer Malvo. The only reason that the city's relied on, the city manager relied on, the department relied on, was an ill-conceived letter by the district attorney. And there's two problems with that letter. First, it lumps all three officers together. There's no individualized consideration of the impact of this investigation on the records of each officer. Officer Malvo was considered in the same breath as Officer Ragosa, and the conduct is nowhere similar. Officer Malvo did not engage in any conduct. There was no complaint about him. He didn't know of the conduct, about the conduct of which the complaint was made. So to lump Officer Malvo in with Officer Ragosa in analyzing the situation was a serious flaw in the letter by the district attorney. The second flaw is that a misapplication of the Giglio principles. Now, I'm not going to go over the Giglio principles before. I know you've heard it before, and it's not important to you. But it is important in the law, because what Giglio's for is to protect a criminal defendant, to give him the information that he needs to be able to put on a valid defense. That includes impeachment evidence. As Arbitrator Kossoff spells out in his decision, and is absolutely clear under Kansas law, this incident would never be admitted in Kansas courts to impeach Officer Malvo. There is no valid reason to believe that Officer Malvo could not testify in court credibly as a witness, because he would not be impeached with any of the information involving this case. So, the district attorney's letter is not a real legitimate reason for treating Officer Malvo differently than Officer Graham. It's a pretext. It is not a real reason. So the record shows why there is not serious misconduct here for which Officer Malvo should have been terminated. His conduct was no more serious, one would argue not as serious, as the conduct of an officer who only received a written warning. But beyond that, there are good reasons for Officer Malvo to be on the Hutchinson Police Force. He served as a valuable member of the department. All of his performance evaluations identify him as an asset to the department. He has an attitude and demeanor that represents the department well with the public. And in these days in which police forces are under increasing scrutiny for lack of diversity, Officer Malvo is an officer who has already represented this department well. The record shows one instance where Mr. Malvo had appeared at the schools as a stranger danger officer. He was there to advise children of safety measures. He did that on a regular basis, but one instance stood out in which a young lady had been caught stealing something within the classroom. Officer Malvo spoke with that young lady and told her the importance of not stealing, and he promised he would follow up with her to make sure he knew how she was doing. And he followed up with that and made such an impression on this young lady that the principal of the school wrote to the police department and says, "This is the kind of officer we need. This is someone who represents the police department well." In addition to the positive evaluations, the commendations that appear in Officer Malvo's file, in addition to the measurements taken of his integrity by the United States Army, by the Food and Drug Administration, that this is a person who is trustworthy, who is entitled to top secret clearance, he can be trusted. There's the fact that Officer Malvo has learned from his mistakes. The record shows in his evaluations that when Officer Malvo makes a mistake, he doesn't repeat it. Officer Malvo made a mistake. He denied that he had received a text message. And in that time, He recognized his mistake. He acknowledged his mistake to the internal affairs officers. He said, I messed up. But his mistake did not in any way interfere with an internal affairs investigation. So this is a mistake that should be corrected. Discipline is supposed to correct misconduct. It's not supposed to deprive the city of a quality police officer. Officer Malvo made a mistake, he corrected the mistake. His record shows that when he makes a mistake, it doesn't recur. So the events that have occurred here have done nothing other to establish for Officer Malvo that in the future he should not withhold any information. That he is an officer who the department will be able to rely on to provide all necessary information and to be the kind of representative of the department that the department needs. We would ask you to consider this appeal, to consider the decision by Arbitrator Kossoff, and listen and read his explanations for why Officer Malvo should not have been terminated, and why Officer Malvo will be a credible witness in the future, and reverse the city manager's decision, reinstate the arbitrator's decision, and reinstate Officer Malvo to the police department. Thank you. Now, do you have any questions?
Thank you. I think we'll let Paul speak, and then maybe we'll have questions after that. Thank you.
Paul Brown, City Attorney. Council, you've received absolute volumes of information on this matter, so I'll briefly summarize some of it. But let's be clear on why Charles Malvo was terminated. One of the first statements made to him when he is interviewed by his commanding officers. Before we get started, I'm going to let these guys handle most of the questions. But I just want to say one thing for you to keep in mind before you answer any questions. Okay? We sent 2 officers home for lying to us. Just keep that in mind here as we proceed here, okay? And about 3 lines later, he's asked, and they're talking about, officer goes, did he text you? No, not yet. Then later in the second interview. Okay, when we first asked you the question, when you first got in here, whether or not you got any text message, and you responded, no, why'd you lie? Because I didn't want to get anybody else in trouble. I didn't want to actually be a part of it, actually. There's the problem. That's why he was terminated, because he lied to his commanding officers as part of an internal affairs investigation. This internal affairs investigation was about Jamin Ragoza. It was about sexual harassment of a female citizen. And when you have lying during the internal affairs investigations, you can't determine what's going on. You're trying to find out what's going on. You need officers to tell you the truth when they're interviewed in an internal affairs investigation. He was warned from the outset, from the very first statements. Don't lie. We sent 2 officers home for lying. He didn't make it 3 lines, and he's already lying to the officers who are interviewing him. And then he's terminated. Well, rightfully so. The rules and regulations for the police department require officers required to speak the truth at all times, whether they're under oath or not. Certainly they're required to speak the truth when they're talking to the commanding officers. You're sitting across the table from a captain and 2 lieutenants. You don't understand that you need to tell the truth? He knew better. He was warned. He was specifically warned. Still lied. Because he didn't want to get involved, didn't want to get anybody in trouble. And now he's terminated. And he violated the department rules and regulations. And in the collective bargaining agreement with Fraternal Order of Police, it includes the definition of just cause. And in the definition it says, bargaining unit members excluding probationary employees shall only be disciplined or discharged for just cause, which shall include, but is not limited to, violations of the department rules and regulations or special orders. That's one of the rules. Tell the truth. If he told the truth then, none of us would be here now. None of us. At any stage of these proceedings. That's just cause. And it's not about Officer Graham. It's not about what Officer Graham did. It's about what Officer Malvo did. And if you want to talk about disparate treatment would be if we did something different with Officer Bowringer that we didn't do with Officer Malvo. But Officer Graham, his was about lying about completing a report. But Officer Malvo lied during the internal affairs investigation. And he was found by the district attorney to have lied and committed a Brady Giglio matter that he was not going to be used in the future. And ultimately, there was a termination. And it is significant. And it's important that this kind of conduct be rooted out. And that's why the termination took place. And that's why we're asking you to uphold that termination. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Questions or comments?
I would perhaps ask our city manager, John Deerdoff. John, your letter of November 3rd, November of 2014 summarizes your thoughts and your conclusions as it pertains to upholding the termination of Officer Malvo. Can you review and give a summary of how you arrived at those conclusions?
Well, as I stated during, my position, my decision during the Bowringer situation isn't unlike what I have today, and very difficult, decision for me to uphold the police chief's actual termination. I think Officer Malvo is a good police officer, was a good police officer. I think he's a good person. I've known him somewhat outside of work, and I think he's a good person, and that makes this even more difficult. But unfortunately, didn't feel like I had a choice but to uphold the termination. Officer Malvo did lie during an internal investigation concerning the misconduct, serious misconduct of another officers, and those are situations that you just can't look at as a mistake. It's serious stuff. So that's really what I relied on. I relied on the investigation that the police department undertook and their recommendation, and went from there. But again, certainly not easy, and not happy that we're here today, but the decision had to be made.
Thank you.
Paul, I did have one question, because I think we are all going to make a decision based on this particular case, based on Malvo, not based on Graham. But I do kind of disagree that it's not about Graham, because we keep hearing that case, and the arbitrator makes a good point of inconsistent treatment. However, I think it's completely unacceptable, because that precedent was set at one point that from here on out we have to tolerate dishonesty in the department, and any officer who lies cannot be terminated because we made that decision at one point. Now, I know in your estimate it's a different case, but if we're going to set a standard of complete honesty, we need to just draw the line there, and we need to not make, I guess, this lie was not as bad, so this officer keeps his job, because that's what this mess is about, a lot of it. And it does look like it's not fair, is, I guess, my point. But I'm less interested in the labor laws and the 7-point test, and more interested in the real world implications of a breakdown in public trust between our community and the HPD. Because if an officer is allowed to keep his job for lying, which he would never tolerate in a citizen that he arrested and he was questioning, then that casts a shadow of doubt on the credibility of all the officers. And we have a very good department. So I guess I'm just really frustrated that I keep hearing Graham in these hundreds of documents, and I hope that doesn't come up again. I don't know what happened there, and I can't say if that was right or if that was wrong, but it does cast a perception of inconsistent or disparate treatment.
I think for me, part of the biggest conflict has been the issue of being able to be credible in the court system. Now, I recognize that Mr. Malvo's representative says this would not be admissible. However, I think the reality is that every attorney, every judge, and thanks to the wonders of television and communication, part of the good jury pool in this community would always have questions about Mr. Malvo's ability to be credible should he be involved in a court case. And I think that is one of the things that has bothered me probably as much as anything.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. Jade, I hear your point about the Graham situation, but I guess the way I look at it is, I can't control that.
Yeah.
That's what they did. That's what the department did whenever they did it. I feel like that we cannot ever have a police officer covering another police officer during an internal affairs investigation. I don't care how good a cop they were. I don't care how many letters of commendation they have. I don't care about any of that. If we ever, as the city council, suggest, support, or in any way protect an officer who lies during an internal affairs investigation, regardless of how small or large the lie may be, then I think we risk the credibility and the safety of our community. And I think that's what you were saying also. It just cannot be acceptable. There has to be a higher standard for police officers who go out to protect our community, not to protect other officers potentially at the expense of the members of our community. And so I think that's the direction I'm headed. You know, Mr. Malvo's attorney made a good point, because I liked it when he used the word, you know, the arbitrator in his scholarly discussion of the 7 points. It is a scholarly discussion sitting in an office, not real world. It's not about lying. It's not about police officers with weapons. It's not about the trust of the community. It's not about the morale within the department if officers are allowed to lie to internal affairs. That's the real world. A scholarly application is unimportant to me. Just as the scholarly consideration of whether the giglio does or doesn't imply. The reality is that the district attorney feels like Mr. Malvo would not make a good witness, and therefore does not want to call him to the stand, which means that basically he's not going to be called to the stand. All of our officers need to have a level of trust that when they're called to the stand and they're asked a question, they speak the truth, and they have a history of speaking the truth, so that our community is protected instead of potential criminals being set free based on concerns about the truthfulness of our officers. So, you know, we could all make speeches all day, but I think I would make a motion that we confirm the city manager's decision upholding the termination of the employee Charles Malvo for the reasons presented by the city attorney and also by the city council members today.
I would second that motion.
I would ask if there is any further discussion or if anyone in the audience would like to comment on this prior to calling roll. No one? No?
I'll make one final point. You know, Mr. Malvo, I run a small business. I've had to let people go for little things. I had a guy stole a 6-pack of beer once. I had to terminate him, and he was a great guy. I'm sure you're a great guy. Your attorney says you've got all kinds of approvals. Good. Good for you. I hope you're successful in your future. And I hope you take this mistake for what it is, a small mistake with a big consequence. And I wish you the best of luck, sir.
Yeah.
I got a comment I'd like to make.
Okay. Please state your name and address.
My name's Darrell Pope. I live at 610 East 2nd here in Hutchinson. I've got a question I'd like to make. One is what the question that I have in my mind is what determines what case goes to internal affairs. Because I know that there's been cases in the past, I won't go through any long diatribe up here, but there's been cases in the past where there's some things that I see equally as serious as what you consider this to be that haven't went to internal affairs, and those officers are still on the street. And so my question is, what determines who makes the decision is what goes to internal affairs?
John, would you like to address that?
I think Troy.
Or Troy?
Yeah, Troy may want to do that.
We have no clue.
Not sure what Daryl's referring to, but you can.
I'm not sure what Daryl's referring to either, but when a citizen makes a complaint with the police department, it's reviewed by myself or Lieutenant Yingling. We review it, look it over, and see what the issues are, what the concerns are. Usually, if the concerns are something of a, just for an example, maybe an officer was rude with a citizen, and the citizen felt that the officer was rude and then filed a complaint. That might be something we would turn over to the officer's immediate supervisor to look into and investigate, and then report back to us. Something of greater, some sort of greater severity level. This is a great case here. The Ragosa Malvo Bowringer issue. To us, that was something of greater importance that needed to be investigated through through a formal internal affairs investigation. I mean, we were talking about, there was concerns of serious misconduct by officers, and that needed to be something that needed to be investigated by internal affairs.
And by serious conduct, you mean sexual harassment, potential stalking?
Yeah, absolutely.
Really,
Those
I
are
mean, I think people
serious-
need to understand what was involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are serious misconduct issues.
Well, let's so let's get back to the real world. So let's just say that Daryl hears about a situation he feels to be very serious, okay? And he hears that the police department doesn't do anything about it for whatever reason. Maybe it's reviewed internally, maybe it's not. I don't know. Can't he contact the city attorney or the city manager and provide them with this information about what they consider to be a serious event to get someone outside of the police department looking at this matter? To kick the ball rolling, if you will, for an internal affairs investigation on outside force looking into what's going on within the police department? Isn't that appropriate?
Certainly, yeah. I mean, that would be an option he would have.
Okay.
But I would invite him to come and talk with us, or me, the chief, somebody, and ask us why we made the decision we made on a particular issue that he's concerned about.
Sure,
We
but-
would absolutely be candid with him and explain to him fully what, the reasoning for our decision.
Sure. Well, I mean, Troy, I would feel more comfortable coming and talking to you about anything. But I think there are probably some citizens that wouldn't feel comfortable if they had a concern about a police officer going to the police department. And I think the point is that they can always go outside of that system and go to the city attorney or the city manager directly and have an outside,
Sure.
level of authority looking into what's going on.
Yeah, that's absolutely an option. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Are there other comments?
If I may,
Sure.
one statement that was made there, I just want this record to be absolutely clear that there is no indication, nothing in this record indicates that Officer Malva was any way involved in sexual harassment of a citizen. Because this is a public hearing, I don't want that statement to go unresponded to. The record is clear. Officer Malva was fired because he didn't disclose that he received a text message. So let this hearing not show that he was involved in sexual harassment in
Yeah,
any way.
He was not. I agree.
Further discussion? I would just like to say that I think we all poured over these hundreds of documents very closely because we recognize that a man's livelihood is at stake and it's not a small decision. So I hope that it doesn't appear that it was an easy decision. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Bush,
Yes.
Soldner,
Yes.
Dave Line,
Yes.
Pyros de Carvalho.
Yes. Next item, please.
Item 8A, report of city officials.
We'll start with Nancy. Do
Nothing.
you have anything, Bob?
Boy, this kind of just sucks the life out of the room, doesn't it? Yeah, I guess I would just like to say that several people have announced that they are running for city council positions coming up. There'll be a local election. I am term limited off, so the Northeast position is available for someone to run for. We also have Cindy Proett, who also is term limited off, and so the Southeast District has a position available. I know that people have completed their applications, and we have folks that are running. So I would encourage people in the community to take the time to get to talk to the people that are running and find out who they are. We do have one contested race, but whether it's contested or not, it's important to know who your elected officials are going to be for the next 4 and maybe even up to 8 years. So I would encourage people to get involved with the process. So.
Thank you. John?
No, nothing this morning.
Okay, I have nothing. What about you, John?
No, just a reminder that we'll be in Topeka tomorrow for City Hall Day, and I didn't know if I sent out a fairly lengthy weekly report, if there were any questions, but just to, you're aware on the Mervis project, we continue to work that project forward, and a lot of little details outside of our control that's kind of really put a little bit of a delay on getting the plating and the conditional use, which we've been ready for weeks now to you for consideration. But we continue to work on that and hopefully get that to you very soon.
But there's nothing that makes you concerned about the
No.
project going through at this
It's
point in
just-
time?
No, just
Jump
you know,
into
just
the
you know, little
hoops.
things like a gas line, abandoned gas line easement across that property that you got to go through a corporate chain somewhere that doesn't happen just overnight, kind of thing, and a few things there, and we're finding out some issues with EDA on the grant there, original grant that funded that project, and some of the details we've got to work out through them to actually deed that property over, clear title, and just things like that. But we're moving forward, and but nothing that would concern me at this point.
Okay, good.
Okay.
And I believe that's all I had,
Great. We don't have executive session or anything,
No.
right? Wow.
unless you want one.
Next item, please.
I'll make a motion to adjourn then.
I will second.
Please call the roll.
Bush,
Yes.
Soldner.
Yes.
Dave Line.
Yes.
Pyrus de Carvalho.
Yes.